This is a show hosted by two former Googlers. You got Joe Kernaski, he's VP of Eng. I'm Jordan Thibodeau, do mergers and acquisitions. If you like business, AI, plus a dash of comedy, this is your show. Hit like and subscribe. Today, we are joined by Anthony Repetto. He is a self-taught mathematician who leapfrogged at UC Berkeley's upper division in high school, skipped college to design practical solutions from fish farms to Panasonic tablet touchscreens, and now focuses on neural network architectures and real-world design. So, Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you.
Hey, nice to have you. Nice to have you here. I came across Anthony's work when I was on Medium, and I was like trying to figure out what the hell are these mixture of experts things. And then I searched and I found Anthony's blog. And back in 2017, Anthony said, a mixture of experts, MOE, is a special type of neural network. Neurons are connected in many small clusters, and each cluster is only active under special circumstances. He says, as neural networks become complex, integrating many streams of data and supplying a great variety of responses, mixture of expert models will dominate. So it helps to understand how a mixture of experts could evolve. So back in 2017, you were already saying, like, this is going to be the way forward. So what gave you that insight? Yeah. Good call.
It was particularly, it was right after the attention paper, Attention is All You Need, the original Google transformer paper. They were using vector similarity for attention. And Jeff Hinton's original mixture of expert model is by vector similarity. The capsule network was published just a couple months after the Attention is All You Need.
For noobs,
so I was specifically saying
for noobs,
these two models.
Sorry, for noobs, vector similarity. Can you explain real quick and then go back?
You're trying to locate everything in this high dimensional space, and the closer the vectors are together, then you just assume that they must be similar. So like king and queen are different from each other in the same way that man and woman are different. They have vector spaces that are preserved. So that vector process in attention, I was like, that's perfect match for Hinton's capsule network. And I looked at the different benefits that you get from it. Back in 2017, we were looking at long short-term memory, like LSTMs and end-to-end ResNets was the norm. Like every conference I went to was like, obviously just do a ResNet. So to say mixture of experts with attention amongst all the other options, that was what I argued for. And the thing that I argued after it was that you could also improve upon that by detecting the error detector neurons and growing a new expert at that location. And so I still haven't seen people do that. I don't have the data and the servers for that.
Explain error detection neurons, and then maybe why people aren't doing it. And Joe, if you have any follow-ups after Anthony's response, go for it.
Yeah. I sketched a drawing. So you can see on the page here.
Hell yes.
That as you get neuron activity increasing, you're gonna get a covariance if it's all clustered. The neuron activity is clustered with the loss of the network. So the more loss you get, the more active that neuron was. That's an error detector neuron, and there's bound to be some mixed in your network. So you just look for them, and those neurons are just naturally going to tell you when the whole network is going to be wrong. And you grow a new expert at that neuron. And that expert you train while everything else is frozen. You've just trained an error detector expert. So I haven't seen anyone do that yet, but I'd love to see Google or OpenAI, whoever wants to jump in on it first.
But Anthony, why not try out this idea yourself? I mean, I know you can't necessarily host a huge network, but it seems like you could build a small experiment and just verify the idea before trying to ramp it up.
I could. I'm a horrible coder. And I tried Mathematica. I was like, I can't really do much with this. And I tried C++. And I was like, I can't do garbage collection. I got Python up to list comprehensions, and I'm still buggy as heck. So I don't want to be the coder. I'm better as the idea rat. When I worked with coders, that's how I started my company, was teaming up with people. So I would love to, basically.
Okay, so if someone reaches out and wants to help out, I'll tell them to reach out either on info@svinvestorsclub.com, and I'll connect them with you. And if they can just email and explain like a background, like what they do, so I know like they're not a kook. Hey, we just launched our 18th episode on breaking down the latest in AI agents from mobile apps to OS integration. You can get it at patreon.com/SVIC. Head over there, get a free preview, go check it out. And we also have other great information on there. So go to patreon.com/SVIC to learn the latest about AI agents from mobile apps to OS integration. Thanks. That'd be fantastic. You were going into your company. Why don't you talk about your company real quick?
It was called Promethean Solutions because the goal was to optimize the design of physical objects. And this was back in like 2008 to 2014, was when I was like trying to work with different coders, get it all set up. And we were getting the demo ready just in time for AlphaGo. And my co-founder called me, and he literally, the first thing he said on the phone was, "Is this the end of our company?" I was like, "Well, they're doing tree search. It's a different kind of thing. We're optimizing real world landscapes. Physics is involved." And within 9 months, Autodesk was using neural networks to do the same thing that we wanted to do. So company died while it was still in stealth mode. And that was silly. But yeah, I've had a couple other successes just kind of throwing ideas at the companies that have licensing. There was Leapfrog had the touchscreen idea that I gave to them. And then they spun it off to LiveScribe, and then they sold it to Panasonic. But yeah,
So that just
I would
basically
love
so you
to.
could, is it for cell phones or TVs so you can touch screen, or explain a little more?
It's on the remarkable tablet. It's called Anoto Dots, the ANOTO dots, and they were using on paper, and I said put it on a touchscreen, and here's how to make it touchscreen compatible. And they already had the North American license to the dots, so I had to give it to them. But yeah, they spun it off. They sold it off to Panasonic. Panasonic had a tablet with the dots in 2013, and they really liked the dots because it's really high precision. It gives you the best artistic precision, and it's still the cheapest to make. So that's nice.
Interesting.
But
Nice.
I'm gonna drink a little bit.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned in that same 2017 paper, you said the review process can be captured and visualized. When we see what information triggered an expert, we know that the network has based its decision on that information. And because each expert handles a very specific subtask, we know what kind of problem each expert is solving. This is the best way to peek inside the black box of neural networks. We got this answer because this expert fired when it solved this information. So, back in 2017, you saw that eventually we're going to be able to look to see how these at inference, how these models are actually thinking and where they're getting their information from. And then you were hearing stories probably from the doomers earlier last year about like, it's a black box, we don't know what's going on in here, and you're like, we know how to find it already. And then analogical reasoners came out and basically it did what you said, and it kind of proved that. So like, good, like
Yeah.
+1 sweep a leg on that one. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Joe, any thoughts on just like mixture of experts? Like, did you expect like it to kind of like get this big and have such wide success? Like,
Well, I originally came at the mixture of experts because I thought of it as a way to reduce inference cost. Like I thought, oh, the OpenAI guys are going to split their model up into multiple experts, and then they only have to evaluate some fraction of the experts on any given token, blah, 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 reduces the cost of running the model. Okay. And then I saw a paper, I forget the title, but they were basically trying to schedule the routing to the experts such that any given expert only took a fraction of the tokens in the total job, but the token load was sort of balanced across the experts, which is an interesting sort of sub-problem that you get once you have this idea of routing. And I was like, okay, they're really tweaking this. They're trying to get the max performance out of this thing. And then when I saw Anthony's blog posts, I started reading through them, and I thought, okay, he's taking this covariance idea and using it as a way to identify when the network is having trouble. It's having more errors than usual, and he's pinpointing the error. And then he's going a further step and saying, this is a place where the network should organically grow, which is not something that most of the models do, right? They're a fixed architecture. You train them once, and then you put them into production for inference.
Yeah.
So there's multiple ideas in here. I mean, if Anthony wanted to, you could get several papers out of this, no problem. And then he followed on with the idea that the learning, the specific additional learning you would do in response to that error would be an expert, which I hadn't thought of. I was looking for just my own desire. I was looking for a way for a network to grow organically when it was reaching some load, but I'd never thought that the growth would be a new expert in a sparse mixture of experts model. So I feel like if I understand it correctly, and I've described it correctly, I haven't screwed it up, Anthony put together multiple ideas there across the course of a couple blog posts. And I'm assuming we're going to put the the blog URL in our show notes and so on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Of course,
I
definitely.
really encourage people to go there and
Yeah.
check it out.
And I was just going to add something. What you were mentioning earlier about routing between subsets of, that's the top K transformer type. I actually I wrote some notes about it.
On the notes, good.
Top
Cool.
K is on this side, and then hidden size of the word garbage, vector similarity.
Yep.
So vector similarity was the one I mentioned, and the one you're mentioning is switch transformers, where you're allocating amongst a team of experts, and that's really good for stable performance. If you want to roll out to the public and have a like brand associated to your expert, you definitely want the switch transformer top K transformer type, because it's very stable.
Interesting. Yeah. Thanks for naming it. I'd forgotten the name of that damn thing. So those are, I think, all the key ideas that I wanted to hit on the network side, on the neural network side.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like your blog has just a whole bunch of other massive topics. Do you want to move on to some of those? I don't know if Jordan has an agenda in ordering, or if you want to drive it.
We can keep it organic. But is there anything else on the mixture of experts thing, Anthony, you want to get out there, or anything else you want to get out to AI researchers saying like, hey, you guys should try this next?
I had 2 pages, one on Sora and another one on the Sam Altman 7 trillion. If you
let's listen. Also, are you left-handed or right-handed?
Right-handed, and
God
calligrapher by day.
I know your handwriting is goddamn beautiful. My left hand, my right in English, left-handed looks like Arabic. It's terrible. Joe, are you lefty or righty? Yeah, go into Sora.
Okay, yeah. I'll just put it up for a second. There, you can freeze frame on it. Mm-hmm. So the thing about Sora is it is interesting for a particular reason. Different. It's kind of the opposite of Sutton was AI research. He still is an AI researcher who wrote The Bitter Lesson, which was this idea that if you just get more and more data, it gets better, regardless of the architecture.
Yeah. Stop trying to craft features.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be perfect, and that is valuable to remember. But it's also, Sora has an interesting lesson, which is that when you combine a decent architecture, like flexible enough, with a really good data set, then you can get inherent priors. And this is something like Jan LeCun is always talking about, is like the priors in the network. So Sora was trained on Unreal Engine 5, probably, and that has a physics built in. So there's certain aspects of reality that are built into Sora from the data set side. And that gives it the ability to emulate games like Minecraft.
Nice. And it kind of reminds me of, did you see Google's Genie? How I was able just to look at just random pictures, and then it could kind of basically say, between these pictures, now I understand the mechanics of the game, and then I can actually generate worlds through it.
Yeah. I only peeked at it. I haven't seen like details, but details are always sparse these days.
Yeah, no problem. It's not like there's like 10,000 AI research papers coming out a week. Jesus Christ. So what would you like to jump into next? Should we jump into AGI soon, but narrow?
Wait, he had a second page prepared.
Oh, sorry. Go for your second. No, go for your second. Go for your second. Yes, let's do that. Second page.
Yeah. So I'll just go up. I'll put this.
Freaking handwriting, beautiful. Jesus.
Yeah, we got to get these things scanned and put them in the
yeah, scan them. I'll put them in the reading notes, please, later on. So
thank you. Sorry, I just scribble all the time. So the idea is, if we want to fund the future of AI chip ownership in U.S. and U.S. ally control, rather than China or Russia and Iran, then we have to incentivize people to bring chips from around the world into those U.S. holdings. Literally, we want the U.S. to hold all the chips on the table. Mm-hmm. And the way we can get the biggest multiplier for that incentive structure is by having a new kind of dollar that would operate alongside the paper dollar. This new dollar can only be bought using paper dollars, so it maintains the reserve value of paper dollars because it's the only path to buy in. This new dollar is backed by computer chips. So if you have $1,000 bill, you could go have an NVIDIA behind it. And that's the real thing. That's the chip. The chip is the real dollar. And this is a receipt paper or a receipt on a crypto ledger. So you're not printing money because you can only issue one of these once you have the physical chip.
Right.
And there's server banks who are operating these chips and running services on the internet. So they're running the apps, the AI. That earns a real revenue, and you, as the chip dollar holder, are earning a dividend from the chips operation. So it's a way to turn chips as a capital into an asset class that's also liquid and U.S. government secure. That would be a huge multiplier to pull all the chips onto our table. And you get easily 7 trillion from Forex and non-performing real estate and government bonds in Germany and Japan. They'd love to have a dividend on a dollar instead.
It's like a gold-backed dollar, except that it's chip-backed.
Yes.
And since the chips are assets, they're producing some
Revenue.
revenue that can be shared with the owner as a dividend. How do you
go ahead.
How do you compare this to a petrodollar?
This is meant to subsidize the dollar holdings around the world while the petrodollar depletes, because we're going to be moving off of petrol. You want chip-backed dollars to back the U.S. currency, so that people would still issue debt in U.S. dollars and stuff like that.
Right, and I don't think petrodollars are productive, are they? You don't get any dividend from holding them.
No, it's just a commodity. Yeah, capital is the thing you want to have backing your dollar, because capital you would incentivize. You'd be incentivizing more capital production.
Right, so this is a way to encourage the build out of all these chips and data centers, to get investors into them.
Yes.
To potentially share some of the revenue with the larger population, which I think is part of Sam's goal in this whole thing.
It would lower prices for U.S. and U.S. allies for all our apps, basically.
Yep. It also sort of, in an interesting indirect way, makes the dollar stronger against other currencies, right?
Because people need the paper dollar to buy into the chip dollar.
Right. So like the petrodollar. And then to your point, is a way to transition from the strength of the petrodollar in the past as it weakens this chip dollar. Is it called the chip dollar?
Yeah, just call it chip dollar. It's I call it chip backed dollars, but that might be too much.
Oh yeah, that's not going to last. It's going to get shortened.
Yeah.
It's more accurate, but it's not going to last. And so it's a way to transition from this petrodollar regime to a new chip dollar regime. So this is really fascinating. What are the arguments against it?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of like the open source anonymous community who say, "Oh no, but the U.S. government is owning all the chips now." I think that's better than China. If I have to pick between the two, it's going to be one or the other.
Yeah, you got me there.
My battery's running low. Let me try.
Uh-oh.
No problem.
I'm going to plug this in.
Get a power supply.
Yeah, no, I thought this was a really novel idea, and I also like how you usually hear people say, like, all right, we'll fix all of our currency issues by just going back to gold. I'm like, yeah, we go back to gold, and then we might create a deflationary crisis, and we'll be back to where we were in the 1890s, and the whole, like, I forgot who it was, the cross of silver. The farmers were pissed because the dollar wasn't inflating enough, and the farmers had their mortgages, and they became more expensive. What I like about your idea, Anthony, is you said, no, like, keep the current regime, but then you have chips dollar here, and if people want to move dollars to chips, the chips dollar, they can do it. And it's not like it's not an all or nothing. But then also what I like what Joe mentioned too is like Sam's going through this whole WorldCoin thing, which I think it's great. He's trying to do this, like to get the dividends from what's coming out of this. If this AI future happens, that everyone gets advantage of this. But he's dealing with a lot of countries who are going to try to block him and attack him because they look at it as a direct threat. Whereas yours is like, no, this strengthens the U.S. It doesn't attack the current regime, but then also any Joe Schmo, doesn't matter where you are in the economic stratum, can put money into this and now get a return off of what's going off of AI and chips. So I thought that was really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Continue with have you floated this idea to like economists? Because one of my friends actually has a master's in econ who watches this show. I'm not going to give his name, but I'm going to tell him he knows who he is to watch it and give me feedback on this.
Yes. Yeah. If this message can just get into Sam's ear or someone with some Fed cred, I would be happy just to tell them about it. I don't need to be involved in the details.
Right. Because
I can't tell them about auction models and stuff.
Right. Well, because the Fed, I mean, they were getting pressure from crypto, this and that. And in the U.S., I think in one bill, they said they're going to create U.S. crypto dollars or something. I forgot exactly what it was, but it was like the federal government saying, oh, hey, we don't want to miss out on the crypto aspect of what's going on here. And now this is like, maybe there might be some people in the federal government who are interested in this idea because there's a lot of positive externalities from it, from the fact of like now we're going to invest in more chips, more jobs are going to be created and
Exactly.
whatnot. So I thought that
Yeah.
was really cool. And then also made me think about like Bitcoin, which I like the idea of Bitcoin that it's like, hey, this is something, it's a third party currency that's not controlled by governments, but it's kind
Yeah.
of like, yeah,
I'm a
you,
crypto fan.
oh yeah, we are, yep. I believe in the promise and all that, but I also think like, hey, if I could give it to Bitcoin, but like, I get a coin and it's not really doing anything, or I can get a chip dollars where the money's actually,
Yeah.
investing in capital, improving, like producing more chips. Like
Yeah.
I like that.
That's
Anything
Hmm.
what
else you
Anthony
want to talk
said, right?
about?
It's just a commodity, but no dividend.
No, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right, Joe. Anything more you two want to hit
You
on the
also
chips dollar? Go for it, Joe.
you compared it also to Edison's idea of the real estate backed dollar. Can you explain that
Yes.
one?
It was just about 100 years ago. Edison was offering a real estate backed dollar. I think it was in response to the Depression because real estate earns revenue, if, not just as rentals, but as like agricultural land or mining
Mm-hmm.
land.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was saying the national reserve of real estate could be a dollar backing that would be less less volatile and not subject
Mm-hmm.
to just wanton printing. That was one of his concerns. Is just the hyperinflation, and that's one
Right.
of the issues with my thing is you can only print one of these dollars when you actually have the chip. You can't just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
make crypto tokens.
Right.
That's a
It's a harder form of money.
yes, which makes it
It's
more valuable.
right. Uh, Interesting. And I don't think the real estate backed dollar idea got very far. What was the objection to it? I mean,
Oh,
I should also add that now people are really upset that there's a bunch of billionaires who are buying up huge amounts of farmland, right?
yes, yeah, it's kind of happening inadvertently because
Yeah.
real estate's a hedge against inflation. Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it was just the like institutional inertia. Maybe they had the Federal Reserve happening around the same time. I don't know the details, but
Mm,
yeah,
I see.
there's usually a lot of pressure against changing things, so I wouldn't be surprised. It was also the time when Henry George was popular. He was talking about a similar idea.
I was
Mm.
just thinking
Yeah,
about. I was just going
The
to bring up like Georgism, and maybe you can talk a little bit
yeah.
Yeah,
about that.
Georgism.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not an expert. I'm not a Georgian.
Okay. I'll just parrot from what I heard from Peter Thiel. Well, basically, like, the whole Georges theory back in I think the 1890s, early 20th century was like, hey, why is it that you have people who are creating productive things like factories and people who are creating new ideas, but then putting 30 to 40% of their income to some landlord who's not really doing anything? We need to maybe figure out a better way out of this model. And I don't know his exact theory, but it was basically him challenging that rents are like basically too damn high. And
Hmm.
then Peter was talking about the 1990s. He was like, if you would have told me that Manhattan rents would be like 2x, 3x, 10 or 15 years later, I would have said you're smoking crack. And
Hmm.
I think of that a lot is like, Anthony, are you a Bay Area OG? Because you're up in Oakland, right? Have you been here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you know Harry's Hofbräu? Do you remember that place?
I've never been there. No.
Okay, you lost your credibility. Then get off the show. And I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
I'm sorry.
So
I
Harry's
make
Hof
rice at home.
No, you're good. You're good, man. No, you're man of the people. So, me and Joe are bourgeoisie. There's a place called Harry's Hofbräu, and it's a German meal house, and they make really good roast beef and turkey. But they started in the
Mm.
1950s, 1960s in San Jose. But they had a really good lease agreement, and they closed like 2 years ago. But up until then, you could get like a gigantic plate of food, like a big thing of roast beef. You can get mashed potatoes. You could also get two sides. You would then get a dessert and everything, and Caesar salad, and it would cost like $15. And I
Wow.
was thinking about the aspect of it. It was like when you go to a restaurant, you're literally eating the rent. When a new restaurant comes out, they're paying so
Hmm.
much for rent that they have to make their portion smaller. Whereas Harry's had a really good lease agreement, so they can give more to their
Mm.
customers.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was like his peers saying like, hey, like I know I'm libertarian, but there's probably something to be said about Georgism here about how rents are going.
Yeah. And
And then
something to be said for oh sorry. Yeah.
no, go for it.
Boom towns because we used to do this in America. We would make a new city and the rent would be low. And
Hmm.
that would incentivize reinvestment and you'd have industry build out and infrastructure. And with suburbia, we stopped building new cities. We
Mm.
just expanded around the existing core and we decided you just can't make a new city. But that's the best way to incentivize new industry.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I was really thinking about that because I was talking to a family friend of mine, and his family were like the founding family of Santa Clara. They literally
Mhm.
Santa Clara's right next to San Jose. They literally gave some of their land to city halls. So they could build their city hall on top of it, and then
Wow.
some of the family went to Central Valley. And back then, all you had to do was like basically say, "Hey, I want territory from this area here to this area, about like a thousands of acres or so, and I'll take care of it." And you go to a real estate department, and they give you your title, and you now own the real estate. But the rule was, going to your point, you got to do something economical with it, and they had promised that
Yeah.
they were going to turn it into farmland. And the
Hmm.
families held on to it to this day, and they're still producing walnuts on it or whatnot. But they were
Wow.
able to
Yeah.
get acres of acres of land, and they're able to start kind of like a new city. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the issues we were dealing with, and that's why I thought with work from home, I was like, oh, finally now we can force people not to. Well, people aren't forced anymore to go to these very expensive hubs. They can now go
Hmm.
to the Midwest. They can expand out again and live a
Yeah.
decent quality of life and actually create new ideas without having to worry about paying their mortgage for $7,000 to $8,000 a month.
Yeah.
So sermon over on that. Should
No,
we
understood.
should we go to what are you two more interested in? Make the drought evaporate, or AGI soon but narrow works better?
Let's talk about the drought being evaporated, I guess, or being
I love that
cured, and
page.
also about desalination generally. These are both
Yes,
really interesting ideas.
dude. I you're raising the bar, man, on images here on the show.
Oh, cool.
This is
He's got a
awesome.
he's got a diagram of the plan.
Yeah.
Go for
So
it.
yeah, the idea is just you take a buoy floating in the ocean, and it's got an aluminum frame with a trough up, just a plastic bucket basically, and you're pumping seawater into the bucket, and it drips through all these thousands of holes with yarn hanging down. It's
Hmm.
fiberglass yarn, so it won't degrade. But the yarn lets the water travel down in the wind, and you
Hmm.
get 100% humidity with only the cost of pumping the water into the trough.
Yep.
So it's a few thousand times less energy than desalinators with reverse osmosis, even the
Hmm.
most efficient. And it's hundreds of times less equipment. So you can potentially scale enormously. The entire coastline of Saudi Arabia, you could just put these evaporators on it. And
Right. So
it's
you're
just,
you're putting fresh water into the air essentially.
and letting it rain just a few hundred miles
Right.
away, it's going to rain. The
Right.
humidity makes it more buoyant.
Hmm.
Water vapor is actually buoyant compared to air.
Hmm.
And so once it rises high enough, then the air pressure is lower. And that's adiabatic expansion, which
Hmm.
causes cooling. When it gets lower pressure zones, the air expands and cools rapidly. And that's what forms clouds and rain.
Hmm.
So you want to encourage that convection cycle. And you can put like flecks of black paper or ceramic on the highland mountains, and that'll help convect by additional solar radiation, basically, into the air.
Why does the rain go inland? Why doesn't it rain in the same area as the collectors?
The collectors are going to be adding to the sea breeze low to the ground, and it's going to have to gather the heat across the land to start rising enough. It just takes
I see.
time in the wind.
I see. So it,
So
it
the
evaporates by the coast where you're putting the evaporators.
Yeah,
It goes up into the atmosphere. The clouds move inland and concentrate and eventually triggers rain.
yeah,
And the fresh water is basically coming down inland where you mostly want it anyway.
yes. So in Saudi Arabia, for example, you'd have the fresh water would come up to the middle where the mountain range is, and you'd get rain on the mountains that would flow down in both directions. So you have ready access, easy
Yep.
to build irrigation systems.
Yep.
And you avoid the pumping and pipes, which is usually the limitation to distributing water, laying pipes everywhere and having to pump everything.
Hmm.
So
Why would we only do this scheme in Saudi Arabia? It seems like the California Central Valley could have used a scheme like this.
yes, I would love to turn the Salton Sea into a lush marshland, but Saudi Arabia is run by a king who happily spends hundreds of billions on things. So I figured he would be the most amenable to trying it out first.
Yep.
Second
They
would
have the
probably
mo-
be Australia.
yeah, they have the burning need, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it would mean food and water security for their country too. That you could feed even on low intensity grazing. For it's
Hmm. Hmm.
300 million acres is Saudi Arabia. It's multiple times bigger than Texas. So they could feed 100 million people goats and goat's milk and honey, literally
Yep.
milk and honey.
So are you thinking that if they set up such a system, I mean, you're thinking about lots of collectors along the coast, lots of rain inland on the mountains,
Mhm.
and then the water running off in both directions, and essentially dramatically improving the vegetation in the
Yes.
lowlands.
Yeah.
And
With
then,
minimal effort,
yeah.
minimal hands on the job. Yeah.
And do you start reclaiming part of the desert as a result? Like, what happens next?
Yeah, you would probably want like autonomous trenchers that just because it's in the middle of nowhere, you're not worried about hitting someone's dog. Just contouring a thin, deep trench. You want it depth because that builds up the water pressure that pushes it into the ground system. If you have a
Mm,
shallow trench, there's not enough water pressure. So they got like
I
3 and 4 foot deep trenchers.
And is the idea there that you're trying to capture the rainwater and keep it in the ground?
And then you can start developing tree cover and things like that from the groundwater.
Oh,
Interesting.
are you also saying too we're going to be able to recharge our aquifers that desperately need to be recharged with fresh water because they're collapsing? Correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're back to fixing California.
I know,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Two
many
things.
fixes.
I try to get you. I wanted to support your argument by showing that there is a desal plant in. Can you guys hear me, or am I too faint?
Oh, yeah.
Can you
It
hear me?
clipped out for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a desal plant that was built in California. I think it was in down south, and I was pro
Mhm.
that, and I still am pro it. But it costs like $2,000 per acre foot. Your method is $12 per acre foot. So a
Yeah.
dramatic improvement. But then what's blocking it here is the fact that we would need acres and acres of land to get the seawater. What do you think are the major blockers for this approach not being pushed for?
It has to be over a large area, and you're just going to let it rain hundreds of miles inland. So if you have fragmented territorial boundaries, like in North Africa,
Hmm.
you're not going to be able to form an agreement about water rights or who's going to set it up to. Like there would have to be a lot of consolidated conferences. There'd be many years of expensive dinners to figure that one out.
Yep. We're fighting over water rights in California, and I think it's one government.
Yeah, it's one political party, and we still can't decide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a really good documentary on PBS called Cadillac Desert, and it talks about the history of
Mm.
how LA got water through the Owens Valley. And there was one guy who he called himself a self-proclaimed water crusader who worked for the government, and he just wanted more and more water for California. And back in the '70s, he was like, I view that probably a couple decades from now, everyone and their mother wants to come to California, and our population will explode. And that's why not only Owens Valley, we need to get more water from like North America and Canada and pipe it down here. And everyone looked at him like a crank, like, "Oh, you're just crazy or whatnot." And then now, like when we were just in the drought last year, I was like, "Man, I wish we'd have listened to that guy." Damn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The NOWAPA plan, North American Water something Association. Yeah,
Oh,
that was like a LaRouche platform.
oh, really? I never explained that. Can you talk about that a bit?
Lyndon LaRouche to like
Yeah.
renegade political.
Oh,
He's a
yes.
kook,
Yeah, he is a
but
kook.
yeah, he got behind that the water plan of diverting it through the Rockies from British Columbia,
Hmm.
which would work and it would potentially create a lot of new wetlands environments, but it would change things. So no
Yeah,
one did it.
Yep.
no, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like any
Interesting.
kind of major, this is almost terraforming, the scale you're describing. Any kind of major change like this, I can't even imagine the political process to get it approved. I mean, there'd be so many environmental changes to so many things. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some animals and ecosystems that would be radically changed or moved out or eliminated, and people would just immediately want to block such a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the California Delta smelt. It's like the bane of any California governor's existence because you have to keep a certain threshold of water in there for these little smelt. And not the smelt you live
Hmm.
and whatnot, but then the governor's like, oh, I could balance the smelt with the farmers and the people in the cities who need to like drink water. Please shoot me in the
Hmm.
face. And so what I like about your solution was it wasn't like getting caught in the efficiency trap of like, hey, let's just like, take a bath once a week and we'll save water. Yours is more of like, let's bring more supply into the market
Hmm.
so then everyone could
Yeah.
win. So really good points. Any other thing?
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this? Like, I think you mentioned there's a geographic, like there's certain geographies that could benefit more from this. Like you mentioned, like Israel is in a really good spot to do something like this. And
Yeah. Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Looking at the way that the wind travels naturally, the Coriolis effect, it's going to travel to the northeast roughly if you're above the equator. So there's certain locations where the mountain range is inland, and so that's where you're going to get the rain is when the humidity hits the range, and that'll give you the water flow back into the lowlands. So the Fertile Crescent is waiting to be fertile again. You could very much do the same in Pakistan and California because the way the wind travels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Seems like also the efficiency of this method is the amount of surface area you're getting out of the synthetic yarn.
Yes, the surface area multiplied by the wind speed. And so if you put if you have blackened flecks of ceramic that you put in the mountains, that'll increase the heating of the air and convect, and it'll drive higher wind speed. So using the two of them together is definitely the winning combination. Where you balance it depends on how far you need to travel.
I see. And there's probably, I'm guessing there are materials that have even higher surface area than the yarn you were describing. Like if
you could do like meshes and things like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Cool. I want to go to your AGI soon post, but first, I don't know if you heard about that whole Devin AI that got launched recently.
I was watching it last night and fell asleep. Yes.
Okay, sweet. Let's go into that for a second. People have been pinging me about it. So today we're excited to introduce Devin, the first AI software engineer. Devin is a new state of the art on the SWE bench coding benchmark, has successfully passed practical engineering interviews from leading AI companies, and has even completed real jobs on Upwork. Oh boy. Devin is an autonomous agent that solves engineering tasks through the use of its own shell, code editor, and web browser. When evaluated on SWE benchmark, which asks an AI to resolve GitHub issues found in real-world open source projects, Devin correctly resolved 13.86 of the issues unassisted, far exceeding the previous state-of-the-art model performance of 2% unassisted and 5% assisted. Check out what Devin can do in the thread below. Now, when this tweet came out yesterday, it had like 1,000 views. Now it's up to 23 million. So let's play this real quick.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, I'm excited to introduce you to the first AI software engineer. Let me show you an example of Devin in action. I'm going to ask Devin to benchmark one API provider. First step. After that, SQL software engineer, its own code editor, and even its own browser. Devin decides to use to pull up API documentation so that it can read up and learn how to plug into each of these APIs. Here, Devin runs into an unexpected error. Devin actually decides to debugging, reruns the code with the debugging statement, and then uses the error in the logs to figure out how to fix the bug. Finally, Devin decides to build and deploy a website with full styling as the visualization. You can see the website here. All of this is possible today because of the advancements that we've made in both reasoning and long-term planning. It's a really hard problem, and we've only just started, but we're super excited about progress. In the meantime, if you'd like Devin tasks, send us a request below, and we'd be happy to forward to Devin.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I was actually impressed. I mean, it's only 13%, but it's 3 times better than the previous. We're on this part of the up curve. And I guess the key thing is you might as well pass the problem to Devin first, just to see, just to be like, well, did he do something? And it's zero cost, essentially. So as a first pass quick responder, I think it's great.
Yeah, especially if you're planning to do code reviews anyway. And you could flip it too, right? If you're making the changes yourself, you could work sort of hand in hand with a thing like Devin, having it do parts or check parts or review what you're doing, give its thoughts. It seems like you can mix both the autonomous mode and the GitHub Microsoft Copilot style. And both are valuable to your point. You know, if Devin can handle some of your simple tasks 100%, fantastic.
Yeah.
If it gets stuck on, some other fraction and needs a little bit of a nudge, well, that's reasonable,
Yeah.
And if there's some stuff that's way too hard for it, okay, we'd leave that to the people. And I'm assuming this thing keeps getting better nonstop.
Yeah. What I was going to mention there is I could see where certain enterprise solutions, they're going to be wanting to record people's corrections of Devin to train like a tailored model for their own enterprise applications, because there's like certain code-based requirements and stuff. I could see people wanting to pull something that powerful into their own umbrella.
Interesting. I was also curious that a lot of the founders in this company or the early employees were coming out of coding competitions.
Oh, I didn't know.
And it's interesting. It's like maybe they're good at introspecting about their own process when they're making changes to a code base or looking for a bug. And I also noticed that if you watch the various videos they posted, there's like 6 or 7 of them. In several of them, when Devin runs into a problem, its strategy is to add print statements to the code and run it again in order to figure out what's going wrong. And then when it figures it out, it goes back and it deletes the print statements, which I thought was fascinating. I'm like, did someone purposefully like teach it this technique as a way to eliminate a category of bugs? And if so, I'm guessing they're probably working on techniques for eliminating other kinds of bugs.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I'm super curious to see how they, what they're, like you said, they're only at 13 or 14% now. They got plenty of headroom to go.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see what techniques it picks up and what chunks of the remaining, I don't know, 90 or 80, 85% it picks off with each technique.
Yeah. Yeah, the early wins.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. Also, I give them a sweep the leg because they went to Upwork and they probably messaged people like, "Oh yeah, I can help you with your coding problem," and they switched on Devin,
Yep.
and it solved it. It was great. And there's right now there's like an ongoing like there's the AI accelerationist people who are like engineering jobs are all gone tomorrow, it's dead, and then doomers are like, oh, this is gonna destroy society because they're gonna like create viruses. And then I look at it more of like there's people like myself who go to Fiverr, Upwork for like base level like script kiddie, like help me build an app script that links Gmail to a spreadsheet. And now Devin or LLMs can do that. But if you put Devin inside of Salesforce or Google and say, look at this million line code stack and like fix this, Devin's going to self-destruct. So I like what Joe was saying about like give it to Devin first, have a gentleman's crack at it. And it might get most of it wrong, but it's done 50% of the work for you. And then now you're in editing mode, which is much easier. Or maybe it can do certain types of code that's repeated functions you're calling over and over again. It can take care of that. Just like what me and Joe saw in the video this week, where writers love GPTs for novel creation because the GPT can just write a first draft of a novel for 1,000 words, and then the writer goes into editing mode, and it's much easier to be an editor compared to solving the blank page problem. So awesome. I think it's super duper cool. I wanted to do one more video because I love robotics. I just think it's so cool, the advances we're seeing in robotics. And this is a video about Figure AI. Or OpenAI with Figure. Let's see if this thing loads.
Yes.
There we go. Sweet.
What do you see right? Great. Can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So dishes in front of you go next.
The dish that how likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Figure one.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need help with, just let me know.
Our AI researchers just came out with these two new models that allow AI to write like long form stories for you and like novels, and you can interact with it. So me and Joe did a research review on this. You can actually go over to patreon.com/SVIC and get a free preview of it. Check it out. See if you like the video or not. If you do like the video, then consider for $5 a month supporting us. We have created teen exclusive episodes with all types of great, fantastic stuff. You should join. We also have this handy dandy reading list. We have 176 research papers on this thing. This thing's a complete animal. And we also summarize the papers for you so you actually know what you're getting into and you don't have to read the whole entire thing or not. So it's a really great resource. So anyways, patreon.com/SVIC. Get access to our best episodes and then also get access to our reading list. And also these episodes are ad-free. So check them out. Talk to you later. Bye. I thought it was pretty cool. It was very sterile though. It kind of it kind of looked a little bit like scary movie to a degree. Like they could have made it a little more human. Like maybe like put a smiley face on it, change the voice to make it something nice and cute. What do you two think about that video?
I mean, it's excellent to see the integration of all the modalities and getting into the physical landscape. There is always going to be the sim to real gap. So I think there's always going to be that lag, that cusp, getting real transition skill sets. But it's getting to the point where you could see this being a helper bot in like a nursing home. You know, certain tasks might become the market viability is going to hit a threshold point where below that threshold you're not going to see a lot. But then after the threshold, you're going to see value chains that people want to latch onto. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but we're getting really close. So.
Interesting. So you think it's a matter of economics before these things become viable and people start buying them?
And it's mostly about, the percentage error has to drop below a certain level before it's going to be worthwhile. Because if you have to clean up its mess repeatedly, that's when people are like, no, I don't want to.
Yep. More trouble than it's worth in that case.
Exactly. Yeah. The pain points.
Yeah. I'm also curious. I'm guessing in the early days, people will have to adopt a certain artificial interaction to get the systems to do what they want. I mean, even in that demo, I'm curious if the hand on the table is the safety switch for that thing to even take any action. Because he was careful to keep his hand there during the interaction. And the system went completely quiescent the moment he lifted his hand from the table.
Killed the last guy.
It might
Pulled
have
out a
swatted
machete
someone.
and killed the guy.
I'm also really curious about that because we keep making these robots out of lighter and lighter parts, but we're still sort of in the aluminum, magnesium kind of regime. It seems like the ultimate safeguard is just to make the robot out of something light enough and flimsy enough that if it does bump into somebody, it's not a problem.
It has a non-catastrophic failure mode.
Yes. And worst case, the robot is damaged, not the person.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, mass-produced from a weak material that can't hurt humans. Like that kid who was playing chess against that robot. And the robot didn't get pissed, but the kid moved too quickly, and the robot went and grabbed its finger and hurt the kid.
Oh, jeez.
Kid was okay, like a little sprain or something. But my joking self was like, the robot got pissed for the kid's move because he put him in check, and so the robot was like, "I'll get you, little bastard! Grab your finger." So let's go.
Did the Figure AI guys release any information about availability or cost yet?
Ooh, I haven't heard anything about that. That's a really good point. Like, can this thing eventually get mass produced? to the point where it's like flexible enough. I know Elon mentioned for his like Optimus, and of course Elon predictions like with anyone else are flawed, but he mentioned like $100,000 a bot. So it'll be interesting to see what figure goes for their price point, because it'll probably start off just like Tesla went with the Roadster, like enthusiast nerds who just want a bot in their house, and then eventually there's going to be that Model 3 moment for the robot where it's like almost everyone can get one inside. Anthony, your use case regarding seniors, I think, is a huge one, because there's a lot of people, if you ask them, would you like to get old in place at your house, or would you like to get old in a old folks home in front of and be helped by people you don't know? And a lot of people want to stay in their house. And if these bots can come out in time, that they can allow people to stay in place and die in dignity, but also not be a burden to their family, they're going to go for that all day long. So yeah. We got 6 minutes left. Joe, Anthony, where would you like to spend our last 6 minutes before we bounce?
You kept mentioning the. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The AGI soon, but narrow works better essay.
Yeah, let's
talk
go
about
for it. Go for it. Jump in.
Just a brief thing. I'm very restrictive about what I call AGI. I'm not talking about like super intelligence. I'm not talking about having its own motivations or like thinking things through in the way we do, but just specifically the ability to gain new skills without limit. If it can keep upskilling itself, it can make paper clips for all I care. But if it can keep upskilling, that's kind of the threshold for generalizable at least. And I think we're pretty close to having that upskill potential. And the critical components missing seem to be the catastrophic forgetting problem, that if you try to add new modalities or new problem spaces, it forgets the old stuff. So you need some kind of lifelong learning. And you also need neural to symbolic. And we've seen that kind of with Copilot writing code to match what it's observed. When you can match what you've observed with some kind of symbolic function, that's the kind of abstract reasoning that you're going to need to be able to transfer learning zero shot. So once those two happen, which I think is only a few years away, then we'll have a generalizable intelligence that could keep learning. And I think once we do, we're going to realize it's mostly bloatware. It's probably going to be too much to train.
What do you mean by that?
Nature doesn't make a general intelligence except when the environment is changing rapidly. That's when we evolved big brains, is the last 3 million years of rapid ice age changes, dozens of ice ages. So general intelligence is really about out adapting your competitors. If we make a general intelligence, it's really just going to be faster at adapting than us, which isn't really what we want most of the time. Because if it's out adapting us and we have to then trust it, we're trusting it zero-shotting a problem that we don't know. And I don't want to trust it zero-shotting an important problem. So I'm pretty sure we're going to prefer narrow networks that we're able to train quickly and test for reliability and roll out with tons and tons of instances and inferences fast. That's going to be the real market capture, and it's going to win in war. You're going to prefer 100,000 drones that are all running simple software instead of one super brain, because the super brain thinks it's slow and it's only one brain.
Well, that's a really interesting point. But going back to where you started, it sounds like the ability you're looking for, the key ability, is something self-improving.
Yes, and the lifelong learning.
Right. And when you see the self-improving system, which is coincidentally where we open this discussion, and I think some of your ideas kind of hint at that self-improvement, which is why I'm excited to see them developed.
Yes.
But if you saw that self-improving, that would be the hint to you that AGI was going to come very quickly.
Yeah, especially the neural to symbolic. Once it can form abstract reasons why, it's like an equation or code that emulates something.
And then the second part of your point is you don't actually want an AGI so much as you want specialized, well-tested systems that you can put in place and that have an economic benefit as well.
Yeah.
Because we don't necessarily trust something that can out-generalize us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you made the point about warfare, which is equally interesting. If I was in charge of a country and you were in charge of the other country, and you deployed thousands of very specific robots or whatever they are, why wouldn't I deploy thousands of similar robots that had the ability to generalize?
The generalization introduces a lot more overhead in one particular way. There was a paper, it's like a year and a half or 2 years ago, called modal collapse, MODAL. So modal collapse is this weird problem where the more multimodal or the deeper that a network is, the more likely it collapses its learning. So you'll see improvement happening and then it'll collapse and it won't ever recover. And they were studying it and realized that basically what's happening is the network had gotten smart enough to rationalize anything. It could find a way to reinforce its pre-existing world model. Its pre-existing world model would get reinforced no matter what the positive or negative response.
Right.
And so once that happens, you basically have to start over. And we saw that with the GPT-4 leaked training data, is they suffered modal collapse repeatedly. They had to start over and retrain. The bigger the network is, the more general it is, the more that's going to happen, which induces a lag for training. And especially for testing, verification is going to be a lot harder.
Fascinating. We got to pick this one up next time.
We got
Okay, sure.
we got to first of all, like, well worth it, Anthony. Like, well worth. Like, this is like, I'm so glad we had you here. I mean, we both had 36K modems, and it was very tough the first time, but now we have something better. And then second, I'm just like so glad I found your writing. As I'm like stroking my own ego, I'm glad that I showed your writing to Joe, and Joe was like, "This guy's legit. Bring him on." So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Anthony. We're going to link to all your stuff in there. You're going to come back in a few months with more writings, and hopefully we can get some engineers to partner with you so you can start verifying some of your awesome ideas. All right, y'all. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
Peace.
You guys.
Dude.
Bye.